What's going on, Freight Skills, and welcome to another video. In this video, we are going to talk about something that's really important and a lot of brokers don't really take the time to understand. And of course, one of your favorite topics for me to talk about is sales. So this is going to be all about the life cycle of a broker customer. So before we get into what the life cycle of a broker customer actually means, make sure you like this channel, subscribe so that you don't miss any of the videos that I'm going to put out on this topic. Now, when I talk about the life cycle of a broker customer, what I mean by that is that there is a process that you need to follow or that you have to at least be aware of when it comes to getting new customers as a freight broker. You see, a lot of people have this misconception that a customer is a transaction, right? So you could just make 100 phone calls a day and eventually those phone calls will turn into customers giving you freight. But it is not so cut and dry. It's really never that easy at all. And flipping a customer from someone who doesn't know who you are to somebody who's giving you a lot of freight is a really difficult and long process. Sometimes this process can take between 3 and 6 months. Personally, in my brokerage, we have had customers who have drawn us out through a process of over a year and a half just to get our first load. And you can correlate the difficulty to get in with a customer with the type of freight that you're going to get. Usually the longer the customer life cycle, as far as the process of getting in with them, the more premium freight that you will get from them. You know, on this channel, we always talk about going after premium freight. Well, to get that, there is a price to pay, and that price is a really long life cycle and a lot of back and forth between you and the customer. So without any more filler, let's get right into what is the life cycle of a customer. I broke this down into 4 easy to understand stages, so let's get right into number 1. So the first stage of getting a broker customer is going to be the initial prospect. Now, this is when they don't know who you are, you barely know who they are, but all you know is that you are interested in helping this customer or prospect move their freight. Now, when you're in this stage of them being an initial prospect, the only thing that you need to worry about at this point in time is getting as much understanding as you can about the prospect's business. I was actually talking to one of my customers the other day, and they said that they're getting between 25 and 40 calls per day from brokers. And the first question that they ask when they're on the phone is, what do I move? So it's very important during this initial prospect stage, when you don't know anything about them, they don't know anything about you, you at least need to get a baseline understanding of what they're moving. Look up their YouTube, look up their social channels, look up other competitors in the industry, find out what the prospect is shipping, because you need to understand this before you get on the phone with them. If they ask you one of these easy to answer questions and you fumble or you can't answer it, the odds are you're never going to get any freight from them. That call becomes a waste of time. And you know, on this channel, we talk about being efficient and using our time wisely. That is not a wise use of your time. You're better off researching a company for 2 days, getting an understanding of what they do, and then giving them a call. You have a much more likelihood to succeed. You want a high percentage of success in your sales calls. That's how you get it, by doing all that work in the back end. So the second stage of the life cycle of a customer is the introduction. That is when a customer turns from a prospect who doesn't know who you are to someone who you were introduced to, or otherwise a company who was introduced to your company. Now, in this stage, all you have to worry about is furthering the conversation. Usually taking that conversation from the phone to an email or from an email to a phone call. A lot of people get mixed up during the introduction stage because they're essentially putting the cart before the horse. You don't need to get a load from a customer or a rate request from a customer on the first phone call that you make to them. It's usually not going to happen. 9 times out of 10, it's going to take you a few phone calls, a few touches, we call them, in order to get a rate request from the customers. So if you go into all of your intro calls, right, this is when you're making your cold calls. If you go into these calls expecting to get a rate request, it's not going to happen. You're going to get discouraged, you're going to give up, and you're not going to wind up getting anywhere because your expectations were set way too high. All right, so I'm giving you permission to lower the bar, During this introductory period, when you're introducing your services to these customers, you don't have to worry about getting freight yet. What you're worried about right now is making a connection, asking some questions, getting on their radar so that you can move to the next stage of the customer life cycle. As you can see, this is starting to progress. The first step, nobody knows who we are. They don't know who we are. We don't know who they are. Now, we have an idea of who these customers are. They now know us. They know that what we do because we made a call and we introduced ourselves to them. Now we can move on to the third part of the customer life cycle. And this is when you can expect to start getting some rate requests and actually getting assigned load tenders. This is the transactional part of the customer life cycle. Now, this is the best part because this is when the customer actually trusts you enough to be giving you rate requests. They're starting to trust you and give you the work that you've been asking for in the last stage, right? Now, to get into the transactional part of the customer life cycle, it's usually one or two things that have happened. Number one, another broker has dropped the ball, a carrier dropped the ball, and there's an emergency shipment that you need to fill in, step up, and get covered for them. Most of the time, the first load that you get for a customer is not going to be just a beautifully set up platter that you can just make a phone call and cover. Usually it's going to be a disaster or a really hard shipment. So you have to expect that, and you have to understand that when you're in this customer getting stage, if you see a lot of really ugly freight, that's why. Because customers are testing you, and customers are only really looking for different providers if their old providers can't do what they need them to do. Okay, so that's number one. You need to bail them out of something. The second reason that you might get a load tender from an initial prospect and move into this next phase is because they're looking for some severe cost savings. If they have something on their desk that they need to cut their freight costs by the end of the year or by the end of the quarter, they're going to be going out to different providers. And as long as you have made a connection with them and introduced yourself properly, and you have all of your licenses in order and your onboarding process was smooth, you can expect to get some freight requests from them. But you have to keep in mind that they are in a cost-saving mentality. They're not looking for premium service. They don't care. The first few loads that somebody uses you is going to be because your price is really attractive, your service was just exceptionally better than what they're used to, or somebody dropped the ball. All right, that's just the flat out truth, right? So you have to expect that your first few loads for a customer are going to have a very low profit margin. They're going to be very difficult to cover. It's not going to be pretty, but it's not going to be like that forever, because now we're going to move into the last phase of the customer life cycle, which is the development phase. And now this is the goal that you want to set for every single customer that you speak to, because the development phase is when things start to get really interesting for you. The development phase is when the customer has been using you for so long or has been giving you enough freight that they can now trust you to be a trusted logistics advisor. And this is what we always strive to be with our customers. We want to be advisors because we want our customers coming to us with their complex moves. So what might this look like? A customer might call you and say, hey, John, we've been using you for a while. We're working on this project where we're thinking about building a plant in Arkansas to distribute to all of our Midwest locations. Can you work up some lanes for me on what the freight pricing would look like on a per pallet basis or a per mile basis that we can use just to estimate our numbers? So now you might spend your time putting this really big project together. It might take you a really long time, but in 1.5 years, when this plant gets built, guess who's gonna get the first call that says, hey, we have 100 truckloads to move from our current plant to our new plant in Arkansas, and then we need to redistribute all that freight out to our Midwest locations. You're gonna get that call. Okay, so the development phase is a lot of rating, it's a lot of RFQs. You can check my video on RFQs if you don't know how to handle those. And it's really the point in time when the customer stops shopping for rates because you've done such a great job for them that they're just coming to you. Now, there's always going to be 2 or 3 brokers in the mix. Even to this day, our customers have 2 or 3 brokers in the mix, and that's okay. You're not going to win every single lane from every single customer that you have. But In the development phase, you have to understand that it was a process to get to that point. And where a lot of you mess up is you're trying to jump into the development phase of the relationship before you even made them a legitimate prospect. Okay, so you have to be doing a lot of back-end research. Again, there's another video I'm going to link right up here about doing your back-end research and how to actually put those lists together. But what you want to make sure is that you are following these stages and you keep them in mind as you're doing your cold calls, as you're looking for customers, because eventually when you do this in order, you'll have much higher quality clients, you'll have much better profit margins, and you'll have more reliable work. Nobody wants to be wondering where their next load is coming from. And when you have enough customers who you've developed your relationship with, that's when you can feel secure, and that's when you start to have all of the loads rolling in and you can actually turn a profit as a freight broker. So I hope this video helped. Once again, we went over the 4 stages of a broker customer life cycle. And those stages are the prospecting, the introduction, the initial transaction, and the development phase. All right, so you want to keep all of these stages in mind while you're making your sales calls and developing your customer relationships. But before you go, I want to make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any more freight broker updates. And I want to personally invite you to join me in my private Facebook group. The link is right down below. Just click that link, send over your information. I will send you a personal invite yourself in, and I would love to have you in there to talk more about freight brokering. Until the next video, I'll see you soon.